Hey, everybody. Sorry I'm late. I just got out of a special teams meeting. Had all the young guys. I went a little bit overtime. I was like, it's game week. I gave you a whole bunch of minutes back in training camp, so I'm going to steal a couple back now.
Yeah. David Moore, Dallas Morning News. Now that you've had a chance to spend some time with Turpin, what are your impressions of him, kind of what stands out, and is there a comp with anyone you've worked with before as far as a comparison with him?
Yeah, my first impressions of Turp is that he is, intangible-wise, really hard-working kid, a great joy to be around. He's out there catching balls, pre-practice every day. So all the things that you'd love to know about somebody's work ethic, his personality around the guys, that checks the box times 100. And then there's not really a comparable to Turp. I mean, he's very unique. When I was in LA, we had a punt returner, JoJo Natson, who was maybe of the frame-ish, but usually those guys have trouble returning kickoffs. And Turp has proved that he is tough. I mean, don't call him little because you call him tough. His ability to, see the field and make guys miss, or even we even saw, against Denver, breaking some tackles. So it's a long answer, but there's a lot of positive about Turp. And when the regular season starts, there's going to be, some things I'm sure that'll be new, and he'll be one that'll overcome anything. I know it.
Skyler Dixon with the AP. What's the challenge on a dynamic return guy to get him opportunities when the secret's out a little bit?
Yeah, I was kind of hoping actually that the secret wouldn't get out, but obviously, the Chargers game changed that. I think when we're on kickoff return, there's probably not much we can do about having them put the ball in play. That'll be a decision that the opponent will make. We'll have a decision about how far back we want to move them back to return kickoffs, whether it's on the goal line, a couple of yards deep. Situation could call for, being aggressive compared to being, smart. And on punt, I think there's ways to force the opponent to put the ball in play. We're working on that right now because obviously, anybody that goes against a Turpin, including us, if he was on another team, you're looking at how can we force this guy to make fair catches or punt the ball out of bounds. And I think that'll be the mindset a lot of teams will have. And sometimes we'll have the same one based on who's returning punts and how well we think their blockers do. So we're looking at ways to force them to punt us the football if they're not going to do that.
Patrick Walker, DallasCowboys.com. Keeping to, speaking of Turpin, he's shown also that he's a bit more than a return ace. He can contribute offensively as well as a receiver. How do you guys as a team balance having him available for when, let's say, Kellen Moore would need him on a particular set versus trying to protect him against potential injury that could be devastating for special teams?
Yeah, and that's a great call, and that's a big point that I think the offense and special teams will balance that. I don't think there's going to be there's not going to be such thing as probably too much work for Turpin. That's my hopes. I think he is, he's built a certain way, but he is tough. And I don't know if he's ever had an injury-prone type issue. I'd have to look back years, but I think he's going to be gung-ho. He's played a ton of football over the last couple of years where there's potentially a mental burnout, but a physical hardening, which is a positive thing. So we'll balance that. I'm pretty certain that it's not going to be too much of a load for him. I don't know if I answered your question, but I think he's ready to play a lot of football.
John Epstein, USA Today. You mentioned that you wish the secret on Turpin didn't get out. When did you first see him practice what he do? Obviously, there's USFL tape and college tape, but in terms of the secret, what did you start to see that hadn't been shown before his NFL time that you wish did?
Well, I remember looking at him when he was at TCU, and I've never forgotten about him, so that was a big part of it. And then his USFL tape, I think you sign a guy in the middle of training camp. I don't know if I was just hoping that there was going to be a secret with him, maybe there wouldn't have been. But, yeah, the secret's out, and I think he's going to be really good. And part of it, too, is, for us in the Charger game, he broke it, and I was like, yeah, great for him. But then immediately I thought, teams are going to be on it now. But in their positive way, our blockers are highly inspired. When they're blocking for a guy like that, you can be 100% effort and relentless and coach it as much as you want, but there's just that little bit extra when the blockers know they got somebody back there like Turp that, okay, we got to just keep going for a few seconds longer because he can extend plays, and I just got to give it my all. And we've talked about the Devin Hester effect quite a few times that Chicago had, is the blockers knew they had somebody that could score every time he touched the ball. So the guys that were blocking for Hester, we've watched a ton of the tape. We've watched all his touchdown returns, and you could just see the relentless approach that those blockers had. And it's quite a relationship between returner and blocker when they each feed off each other and have confidence in one another.
Babe Loffenberg, Dallas Cowboys Radio Network. With Turpin, two-part kind of comment here, but why did you wait? You've been looking at him since TCU. Why was he not here earlier?
I think he was going through the process of, putting good tape out there, and I think he was overseas. He was in the Fan Football League.
I mean earlier this year, not.
You mean like in training camp or?
Yeah, correct.
I don't know. I think USFL season ended probably mid-June, and he probably needed a little bit of a break. And when we brought him in I can't even remember the date, but I remember when we signed him, it was like, because, I had stayed in touch with him, over the past weeks and weeks and weeks before we signed him. So just encouraging him, like, hey, you're going to get a shot. Hope it's here, but keep working, and wherever it works out, I'm going to be rooting for you, especially if it's here.
You addressed a little bit, size-wise, you don't usually see kickoff returners of a smaller stature.
Yeah.
The Brian Mitchells and like Devin Hester, they're more stout.
Yeah, Tony
kind of
Pollard.
guys.
Yeah.
So, typically kickoff return, they get hit. They go that way, the ball goes that way.
Yep.
So what makes you have the belief that this guy can be different from that standpoint?
I think he's a tough kid. And I think he believes that he's a lot bigger than he is. And that's a good thing. I mean, he's mentioned multiple times. I said, you don't got to tell me. Like, I know that he is a tough, he likes to run right at the cover team. And there's a fearless element where you're kind of like, geez, it's pretty impressive, because not a lot of people like to catch the football and run right at 11 guys running right at him. And he has that mindset that he'll do that. And, sometimes you can say his stature is an asset because he's harder to see behind a whole wave of blockers. And I think that's what happened with the Charger game, is he kind of got lost behind some of the cover guys for them. And all of a sudden he squirts out a backdoor hole and it's too late to make a play. So his toughness will enable him, if that's going to be his role on kickoff return. We have Tony, too, who's really hard to, take Tony off the field on kickoff return, too. So we're pretty fortunate to have some kickoff return runners back there.
Todd Archer of ESPN. Why is Maher the right guy, and how's the operation between the three of those guys from when he got here in the middle of training camp through the preseason?
Yeah, I think Maher's the right guy because once we got him, he was the best guy. His operation's been outstanding. When we first started, it was probably in the mid 1.3 range, and we knew we had to get under 1.30. So just as he acclimates to, Jake Snappin and Brian Holden, we got it in the 1.28 world, which it might not sound like a big difference between 1.28 op and 1.38 op, but it could mean a fingertip, like we saw last night in the college football game. Amazing. But Brett's been a true pro. He's been here before, so he knows, that there's pressure to kick in Dallas, and I think his brain is really good. Jake and Brian are very confident in him. So that's always from a coach's perspective. When the specialists believe in one another, you're like, okay, we got some chemistry here, which is a huge part of it. I think Brett kicked off the ball really well, and I expect him to be really good this season. I'm excited to coach him too, because I've never had the opportunity to do that.
Calvin Watkins, Dallas Morning News. I know it's a college game, but how much do you look at what happened last night at LSU game and then East Carolina game and tell your guys about the operation, that kind of thing?
That was some great football this weekend. I'm glad you brought it up. I was saying I got to get in bed by like 10:30 because I got to get up early. And I'm watching the game, and my wife's asleep, and I'm making noise by myself and the family. I'm like, I can't believe it. They fumbled it, on the goal line. And then, I was thinking, it's a 10-second runoff. But then I forgot in college they stopped the clock on a first down. I was thinking the game's over. And then they missed a PAT, and I thought of the Jacksonville and New Orleans game, the River City Miracle, I think it was, where New Orleans returns the ball, scores a touchdown, and then they miss the PAT. Sorry, I got off track. But yes, situationally, we'll show the team quite a bit of stuff. You know, hey, if there's 1 second on the clock and it's going to wind, we got to snap the football on the ref's ready, not on a cadence. So that happened last night. You're probably aware of. North Carolina, you know, when you're up by 1, you got to go down. We call it no moss, and just take a knee and the game's over. You know, they scored a touchdown, everybody celebrates, they're only up 8. Now it's still a 1-score game. So a lot of cool football in week 1, and I don't know how it's all going to fit into one situational meeting, but we'll find a way to present it to the guys because that was great football. It's so cool to have college football back, and it'll be real cool to have pro football back.
Don't celebrate the touchdown on onside kick.
What's that?
The onside kick, he wanted to score, so they're just going down, the game's over.
Yeah.
In North Carolina.
And we did that 2 years ago. We had 3 games in a row in 2020 where Cincinnati probably should have gone down, but there were situations for scoring. And I think a week later, CD handled it and he scored. Well, I think we were up by like 6 or 7 at that point in time. So at least it was a 2-score game. If you're up by 1, you got to go down because a touchdown at PAT still makes it a 1-score game. But it's also hard to tell a football player to go down when he's racing for the end zone. But that's part of just, you know, football education and us showing those plays to say, hey, we don't want our defense to have to go back on the field again for any reason, whether we're up 1 score or 2 scores. But football is great. I mean, you can't script all the things that can possibly happen, which makes it fun and very unpredictable.
Michael Galkin, Dallas Morning News. As special teams coordinator, part of your job description involves working with rookies and other young players. This isn't an especially young team. What's it been like navigating the trust that is involved in responsibilities that this young group is going to have?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, Michael. We have a great group of young rookies, and I'm not just saying that. You know, they're very capable bodies, but the professionalism and like the mindset and the toughness of the guys we got on the 53, like Ferguson and Hendershot and Harper and Bell and a couple kids on practice squad, Wanye and TC, and I mean, I don't want to leave anybody out, but to answer your question, I freaking love having young guys on special teams mixed with the CJ and the Gifford and the Noah Brown. If you got a couple really hardy vets and you just bring a ton of young guys in there, they just feed off the old guys, and the old guys love mentoring them. So we'd have a very young special teams. I think you'll see that this year, that we'll be real young, we'll be real hungry. There might not be a few mistakes, but man, they're gonna go. I can feel it. You know, we just got out of the meeting, we went a couple minutes overtime, and there's gonna be a lot of young guys playing critical roles on special teams. I'll take them all, man. I love having lots of rookies because it gives you, you know, a couple years worth of really great play. So I'm very excited.
Anything else? All right, thank you.
All right. Thanks, you guys.